everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Cognitive Dissidence. I am Parallel Mike of Parallel Systems.
This is Monica Perez of The Monica Perez Show.
And Hrvoje from Geopolitics and Empire.
Well, it's great to see you both. It's been 2 weeks and the world is now at war, apparently. So I think we've got a lot to speak about on the Iran subject. I thought maybe we could start, Hrvoje, with some of your videos, because I know you've usually got something to kick us off. So I'll hand it over to you and then we can start commenting on some of these narratives, because there's lots of them relating to this one topic.
Oh, you mean on the Iran stuff? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let me just get this.
Because the other thing, I mean, this would have been the biggest news, was what happened in Mexico in Hrvoje's backyard less than 2 weeks ago. And sadly, worse has happened since then. But we do have to get to that Mexico conversation.
Yeah, just on the Iran stuff. I mean, I don't have any. Some of the stuff that I have here is I found interesting. Lockheed Martin, war is a racket. Lockheed Martin says we've agreed to quadruple munitions production, and it's like, boy, bullets and bombs are the big money. But some of the other important stuff here, what was it? Hegseth. So I haven't found the actual source, but this is a clip where Hegseth is actually appearing to say he threatens the entire Iranian population.
The only ones that need to be worried right now are Iranians that think they're going to live. The only ones that
think they're going to live. Like, what what is that? And Pahlavi, I call him the imperial marionette, the Shah's son. This is Ajax 2.0. He has accepted his role as Iran's transitional leader. I queued up the clip.
The Iranian people have called on me to lead the transition.
Have they really? Wow.
After the regime is gone, I have accepted that responsibility. Part of their great mandate to me is to return our nation and our foreign relations to normalcy. I will do exactly that. My commitment is to ensure the transition is orderly.
So we get the idea, blah, blah, blah there. And then this clip I just got this morning, which is pretty wild. At least they're being honest. The oil, right?
This is a long-term gain, because what we want to do is get such massive oil reserves in Iran out of the hands of terrorists. Mm-hmm. And so what we're going to experience here in the short term is highly outweighed of the long-term benefit, because ultimately we're not going to have to worry about these issues in the Strait of Hormuz, because we're going to get all of the oil out of the hands of terrorists.
That's pretty wild. And I think that's it for now. And there are a few other talking points, but I'm just going to add, we've been talking about this for months, haven't we? Maybe even a year on Cognitive Dissidence, and it's finally happening. And for my biggest takeaway is, I think it's a number of issues. Of course, it's oil. Of course, it's regime change, but it's to bring in technocracy. Right, to like we've seen in Venezuela and Gaza and Ukraine, we're upgrading the analog systems of Windows XP to Windows 12 now. Soon we're going to have Windows 12. And even Council on Foreign Relations put out an article. One of our listeners sent it to me, saying that we need to bring in Iranian technocrats for this new Iranian government. And then once that happens, you're going to have the Middle Eastern technate. So, and I'll just add one more thing. I had two of my past podcast guests message me, 3, but some of the things they said, one of them says we're watching the unfolding of the Middle Eastern technate before our eyes. Another said that he's learned a lot from me, that he used to think there was more genuine conflict between the nations, but now he's come around to seeing that most of these actors are sort of on the same page when it comes to globalism. And one more past podcast guest said that it feels like February 2020, right, with COVID, right before the tomato hit the fan. And I think he's on point. This is like March 2026, and I think this is the sequel to COVID, which is going to be used to take away our liberties and implement the digitalization agenda. So.
Yeah, there's loads that we can speak about. The thing you just said, though, I think is really interesting, because we've got all the kind of same ingredients that we had going into 2020. We've got a financial crisis. There's lots of issues behind the scenes, which we'll discuss, but private credit is the one that most people are pointing to. We've got a stock market bubble. But the interesting part about the oil shock that I was thinking is that if they have oil spike over $100 a barrel, firstly, they can blame the global recession or depression on that. They'll say, oh, it was the oil shock, it was the Iranians. And then the other thing is we're going to have a situation where we might have energy lockdowns because nobody's going to be able to go anywhere. If there's no inventory at the fuel pumps, if planes are grounded, which has already started to happen, and people can't fly, and then they say, oh, we're going to have to ration energy, which actually happened in the 1970s. So they've already done all of this. And then all of a sudden, you've got a situation that's quite similar to COVID, where nobody is able to do much. And the other thing I would say to that is if we have an event that's, let's say, a cyber attack, and they blame that on Iran, and there's a banking crisis, well, now you've got everybody demanding some kind of response. And that would be technocracy. I mean, the tether and the stable coins, all of that's still to come. But if we do have a crisis that affects the liquidity of the everyday man and woman, then yeah, COVID bailouts and stimmy checks and debt grace repayments and all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's the same. That's what I was saying in my show just last night. I think it's going to be COVID Mark II. It's going to have a lot of the same features, and we're just waiting for kind of like I know we've got the war narrative, but there's going to be an event at some point, I think. I get the feeling there's going to be a big event that kind of brings it all together and gets the everyday man and woman on board. Because right now, most people don't care about this Iranian war. They don't want to go to war. They've got no interest in it. And the only people that really are on board with it would be the Christian evangelicals who think it's end times. And we can maybe talk about that too. But Monica, let me hand it over to you.
Yeah, I've got a few things there, both from reacting to what Hrvoje is saying and what you're saying, Mike. The AI bubble, which, I mean, I think we've also talked about this, kind of front ran when people were still, nobody even said the words AI bubble. We're like, wait a second, this looks like a bubble. If you look back at the dot-com bubble, that was bursting, and then you got 9/11. So you could have that. I agree that I feel like the cyber lockdown is the 2.0 kind of, like COVID had the actual physical lockdown. The reason I think that is this, I couldn't buy something on Amazon, and I was like, well, whatever, it's just my Wi-Fi or whatever. And then a friend of mine is like, why is Amazon not working? And the news was that they had servers hit in the Middle East, which should not really affect us, I don't think. And I'm thinking, well, they're setting us up for a cyber attack, and thinking about how you would live without that. That's a little bit in contrast with the lockdown stuff where they were trying to get you online. So I don't know what that back and forth is, but I do think a cyber attack is likely. And I also think a real false flag is what it would take to get even the MAGA crowd, who's kind of doesn't know what to do with this war president, when they didn't really think they were voting for that, although they should have known because we told them. But they could have a false flag, and I'm sure they're going to, but they could do something more serious, like we've seen, just because the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania that we all bonded on as being fake, just because an attempt is an inside job doesn't mean nobody dies. So I worry a little bit about Trump, because I think they just gave him his marching orders. I can tell you why I think that, but they just gave him his marching orders. They didn't have to tell him what they really knew about the risks of retaliation, how long the war would be. That just, his was not to wonder why. His is just to do or die, and maybe do and die.
And just to add to that, we're seeing again the signals being put out there. And I think for us that have real good discernment, we're able to form these patterns and accurately extrapolate, predict the future. And again, one of my guests said, messaging me, and I think he's on point, what we saw in Mexico, which I did a podcast on. It was Operation Gladio, a Mexican division. And that, I think, is the shape of things to come. It's almost like they were what happened in Guadalajara here, burning 300 cars, and they didn't really target civilians, but it was almost like that was what we may see in the U.S. And it's wild to see Alex Jones. Like, again, I keep an eye on him, and the other day his newsletter, and it's like so mainstream media. He's got some pretty lady with big boobs in the studio with him, and he's like, I predicted the Iranian sleeper cells. So the sleeper cells are going to be activated in the US. And it's like, guys, really? Come on. That's false flag. And so the guy who, made his mark on being the anti-false flag guy is now literally the tip of the spear, as he used to say, leading the false flag operation. So they've seeded that narrative of Iranian sleeper cells. And as you say, Monica, I would not be surprised if we begin to see these Iranian sleeper cell false flag operations across the United States.
Yeah, I was mentioning on my program just yesterday that in 2021, there was a war game that took place in Israel. And it was between Israel and about 10 other countries, the IMF. So there was Germany, the USA, the United Arab Emirates, World Bank, Bank of International Settlements, Switzerland. So all of the different parts of the snake. And it was a simulation of a major cyber attack on the global financial system. And in the war game that took place over 10 days. And I have studied this thing. I've tried to find information on it. I've spent hours. There's nothing. There's nothing out there you can find besides this one article on Reuters and then other articles referencing it. So that's how you know it's real, because you can't find anything on the damn thing. But what they simulated was essentially a state actor, like Iran, doing a cyber attack on the global financial system. And the response to it was a global bank holiday. So everybody being locked out of their bank accounts, the delinking of major currencies, and then a huge amount of liquidity thrown into the system, just like in 2020 where they printed trillions. So as soon as I started to see reports this week of American banks supposedly preparing for a potential cyber attack because the government's warned them, I was like, oh, it's like that war game that they did in 2021. So I went, that's one of the things that I think, yeah, people should be on the lookout for, that we could see something that is a major financial element of this. And then the other thing, Hrvoje, that you were saying, Peter Hegseth, like, I don't really know much about this guy as a European, but he seems to me to be kind of like the PR guy for this whole thing. I keep seeing him pop up. And, his line that I read was no stupid rules of engagement, no politically correct wars, we fight to win. And it's like, what's this? Like an anti-woke branding for the war? It's like no rules, no checks and balances. And it's kind of like the just announcing to people that we can just go out and kill people now. It's like what we saw in South America, where there was just blowing up boats, assassinations can just happen, kidnapping. That worries me, because it's like they're almost saying to the world, there is no rules anymore. There's no checks and balances. We can do what we want anytime. And that includes to us, the populace, right? So, yeah, just a few more comments on that. And I don't know if you've got any more to say on Hegseth.
I don't know if you want to get into the religious stuff here with.
Can I?
Go ahead.
Yes. Let me just say, Hegseth was a Fox News reporter for 10 years. So you have SecDef's Secretary of Defenses, who the first act as president in 2016 that Trump did was to change the law that disallowed a general from being the Secretary of Defense. That what you're supposed to separate that. We're so far from that this guy is actually just a media personality talking head. I mean, he has some military background, but that just gives him the flavor. And I will say, as far as no rules, the reason I think they know that they can go no rules is, again, a parallel with COVID. What they did during COVID was to ignore ethical and legal rules, but also rules of science, rules of economics, not doing any cost benefit analysis, so they did away with all logic, principles, everything, and they completely got away with it. And I think that is what changed the world.
And I think the thing here, again, the big idea is world government, the World Federation. And in my weekly update, I posited, whichever way we go on these crossroads, it doesn't matter. The end game is going to be the World Federation. And so, as you just kind of alluded to, I could see two things happening. One, America is, in a sense, the beast of revelation. Who can make war with it? right? It's taking everything. Venezuela, Iran, China is the end game now. A lot of articles are coming out and saying Iran is all about China. So they're weakening China through denying it energy access from, getting its crude from Venezuela and Iran. So I could see this, America was an occult project. It was this occult, Masonic, new Order of the Ages, Francis Bacon, Manly P. Hall, the New Atlantis. And we could be at that final moment where America now is taking over the planet to establish the World Federation. Or Iran may be used to blow up America, right? To collapse it. And then the international community, Global South, BRICS, the rest, they will then use this as a pretext to form the World Federation. So either way, we're going to get there. And then the religious stuff, let me just share my screen again here. Everyone is hearing, by the way, it just said Saudi Arabia introduces Pakistan into the war chat and its nuclear umbrella. Saudi says defense minister receives Pakistan's chief of army to discuss mutual defense. But Hegseth, right? U.S. troops were told Iran war is for Armageddon, return of Jesus. My response to that is, here's a meme of Jesus who's saying, I had nothing to do with this. Because again, we all remember, like, flashback, George Bush, 2003, God told me to invade Iraq. And now it's like Hegseth saying, God is telling us to invade Iran. And it's like Bush was skull and bones. He's the farthest thing from a Christian. You can, like, on paper prove George Bush was not a Christian. And you're going to say something, Monica, here?
You know what that might mean? Might be a reference to these dispensationalisms or whatever. If you look at how the Judaism thinks about Armageddon versus the way Christianity does, the Armageddon is the eschatological take from the Jewish point of view, I think, is that, I'm no scholar, Mike probably knows, and so do you probably, Hrvoje, that it comes to where if you have the end times, that's when the Messiah comes. So if you look at it from the point of view of Israel, we look at, like, you're looking at this thinking, why would you ever want to usher in this level of destruction, this kind of Armageddon? It might change Israel forever. They're bringing the Middle East countries in, which I long posited that part of the reason it's Israel versus Iran is that it brings in the entire Middle East. They could just level it, make it Disneyland and McDonald's, which truly would be satanic. But in their mind, they maybe don't fear it if they're actually thinking of it from those kind of eschatological terms. And since Hegseth, these Christians like Huckabee and stuff, they're not looking at it from a point of view like Jesus is the Messiah, it seems like to me.
Well, I think essentially the driving force is a cult. So, like, the Bible uses the reference of the beast will speak, what does it say? Like, look like a lamb and speak like a lamb. But it's actually the beast. So it's got this covering of Christianity when in fact it's Satan, it's the devil. And my view is what they want to do is throw the baby out with the bathwater. The bathwater is what we're seeing now, this veneer of Christianity, and the baby is baby Jesus, true biblical Christianity. And I think what they're doing is this whole political Zionist project, I think, has less to do with Jews. Like, behind it is this, British Rothschild occultocratic thing. And so what they're doing with this Zionist Greater Israel project, it's like they want to attach it to what is sold as biblical Christianity and take it down with them. So, and this has been talked about in conspiracy circles for decades, right? That the Third World War is going to be between the great Abrahamic religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And I think we'll see nukes probably used at some point.
That's super
and the whole world is this is to get the whole world to go against Christianity. And then you bring in the theosophic, New Age, universalist, one world religion. So I think people are getting the wrong idea of true Christianity because you got the Hackabees, the Hegseths doing this whole screwing around. And then this is going to turn a lot of people away completely from Christianity.
To destroy Christianity, maybe you want if that's your sole goal, you would want China to win because they don't have the Christian tradition. But this is the big question, I think. And if you've just squared it away, that's great. But I want to articulate the big question is this, well, one thing that Alistair Crook, the British intelligence guy, said on Chris Hedges was, and it's in the Hebrew News, which you can easily translate, that Netanyahu went to Mar-a-Lago and said to Trump, literally quoting, if you don't do this now the way we're saying to do it, you don't get your kosher certificate. So you need to do it, and this is what we're doing, and blah, blah, blah. So you can look at it from a purely, this is Israel driving this train through Trump, whom they have always owned, who just takes orders, which definitely appears to be true. Is that just one part, a small part of the puzzle? And is it really about shuffling the order and showing China who's in charge, or pushing it to the limit so there really is a real face-off with China, and then you've got the shakeout where it's a whole different world? Does China then go into Taiwan? Like, are they cooperating at that level? And if so, is Iran in on it? So those are my three questions. Is it really just Israel? Is it does China cooperate, and is Iran in on it?
Just whilst we're on the topic, before we go off it, I've got an article here that just blew my mind. So apparently US troops are being told that the war on Iran is all part of God's divine plan. And it says US military commanders have been invoking extremist Christian rhetoric about biblical end times to justify involvement in the Iran war to troops. More than 200 complaints have been received by the Military Religious Freedom Foundation from service members across all branches. And it says that one complaint identified that people are being told that it's all part of God's divine plan, and that they are citing in the military, literally citing the book of Revelation and referring to Armageddon and the imminent return of Jesus Christ. He said that President Trump has been anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran because Armageddon to cause Armageddon and mark his return to earth. And apparently there's not a lot they can do about it because they're in the military. Now, I think this is true because obviously we've seen these videos coming out of the White House where they're all stood around Trump, and there's that psychopath, his Christian spiritual advisor, who is
Paula
literally,
White.
in my opinion, invoking demons. She looks like she's invoking demons. And so, yeah, we know that Israel has just closed the mosque as well on the Mount. So they've closed it for prayer because of the risk of it being bombed. So, yeah, this really is an end times prophecy. Obviously, it's artificial, but if that's where they're going to take it, then yeah, this thing's going to get much bigger from here on out.
And just to add, yeah, I mean, Kit Knightley from Off Guardian, I really liked how he stated. He said, so you're saying that Iran and the U.S. aren't enemies? Quote, he says, they're opponents, but the Dallas Cowboys and New York Giants are opponents too. They meet at agreed times, compete by agreed rules, and they're both answerable to the owners of the league. Their encounters are designed to perpetuate and monetize factionalism in their supporters whilst entertaining and distracting the masses. And then the Temple Mount stuff, right? It says, as you said, Israel has closed it. Someone here kind of jumping the gun, but they're, saying maybe they're preparing to destroy Al-Aqsa. And Tucker did a monologue, and he includes this clip, I believe, from this Jewish rabbi saying they're going to false flag Al-Aqsa. They tried to do it in the 90s, and Shin Bet stopped them. Should I play this clip here with Tucker? A minute and a half. Here it is.
Here's a particularly candid and honestly kind of
Okay, sorry about that. I had my global speed thing on. I turned it off. Here we go.
honestly kind of articulate clip from a couple of years ago. This is from August of 2024 from an Israeli rabbi, Joseph Misrach, describing how Israel should take advantage of a then ongoing conflict with Iran, much less intense than the current conflict we're seeing with Iran, to destroy the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa. Watch this.
If it was up to me, the last time when they shot hundreds of missiles, I would pretend that one missile came from Iran and shoot it down. Then all the Arabs will go against Iran. It will be the end of the problems. You make them fight with each other, this bunch of lunatics. Never too late. You deal with a bunch of cowards.
shoot it down into the Dome of the Rock in Al-Aqsa.
So I think we can stop it there. But yeah. So
just to your point there, Hrvoje, about, are they in on it together? Not many people know this, but when they got rid of the Shah, obviously you need to know your history of Iran because the CIA and MI5 have been involved from the 1900s onwards. So they deposed the original regime that had been there since the 1700s, replaced them with the Pahlavis. They had a coup in which the Pahlavis became autocratic in the 1930s, and this was already when Iran's oil fields had been essentially captured by the British, and then eventually the Americans too. So they had these predatory oil agreements with Iran going throughout most of the 1930s, 40s, and then in the 50s, the Prime Minister Mossadegh, he said, right, we're ending this oil deal, and we're going to take back the oil, and we're going to get rid of you foreigners, and we're going to own our own oil. Well, they didn't like that, so they did a coup, got rid of him, and made the Shah of Iran the autocratic ruler. And then when we got to the 1970s, the Shah of Iran tried to end the oil agreements, and of course we know that he got deposed. But what not many people know about that is there was a 150-mile pipeline created between Iran and Israel, and there was getting around the oil embargo, sending the oil from Iran to Israel for all of the 1970s. I think they made it in the 1960s, actually. And so that continued. Now, when the Shah was deposed, apparently, as the narrative goes, that these religious fanatics got in and they cut off all diplomatic relations with the West and with Israel. But actually, that pipeline flowing from Iran to Israel continued until the 1990s. So
I think the Iran-Contra affair revealed that, like, Khashoggi was brokering arms between Israel and Iran after, in the 80s.
Well, Off Guardian just did, again, Kit Knightley, an article titled "A History in Four Psyops: Has Iran Always Been a Member of the Club?" and using the examples of installation of Ayatollah, the hostage crisis, Iran-Contra affair, which you just brought up, Monica, and then COVID, right? And not to mention the technocratic, Iran is totally technocratic. China is helping Iran build in the entire surveillance grid. But what I find interesting with a lot of this stuff, if you think about it, like Epstein and technocracy, right? It's like they had the Epstein thing going for decades, and then it's like they secure the weapon and they wait to release it in the right moment. So they've been doing the Epstein stuff for decades, waiting for the technology for technocracy to reach the boiling point when it's ready to deploy. Okay, and now we let the Epstein stuff out of the bag to, I think we talked about this before, right? To bring in the technocracy. And so what you were talking about, Mike, that history is kind of interesting. It's like, and Kit brings up these points. We don't have enough info on the Ayatollah stuff, how he was, housed in Iran, right, before the 79 revolution. And that, no, he was housed in France, sorry. And he had contacts with Western
with Western intelligence.
And there's very limited info on that. But it's like...
You know what the Shah of Iran said, though, about him?
What?
The Shah of Iran, when he got deposed, he said, if you lift up the Ayatollah's beard, it says made in England underneath it.
Really?
So he said he was... Yeah, he said that. He said he's a pure product of MI5. He's just British intelligence. He trained over there. His character was created over there, and then they installed him. And he actually said candidly to his own family and in private conversations that the Jews were the ones who got rid of him and led to him having to rebel and go across to the US to flee. So he believed that the Jews had enough of him and deposed him and put the Ayatollah in.
Does seem to have a history of wanting to convert the secular dispute over land and rights to a religious one so they can paint it as being fanatical and not logical. So that's why I think they fostered the replacement of the PLO with Hamas. So you could change it to have a religious taste when it's really about...
I think that, that was my point. But I've got a question back for Mike. But my point was, it's almost like they brought in the whole Ayatollah 79, Iranian theocracy, and then they just let it sit there, marinating for decades until now, to when, for according to their own timing, to their agendas when they wanted to then deploy it, which is right now for the whole Temple Mount thing, the whole World War III situation. So just like they were waiting with the Epstein files for technocracy to get up to speed and then deploy Epstein files, now, they've had the whole Iranian theocracy there. And as you said, Monica, using it as a boogeyman, I'm just curious, Mike, what you think, what's going on then? What was going on in the Ayatollah's head? Like, then he's, in the sense, he's kind of a fraud. Was he just thankful for the assistance he got from the West and then tried to carry out his agenda? Or do you think he was like just some occult initiate bringing about the World Federation?
Yeah, well, I don't know, but it seems to me like everyone involved at that level has this same occult end times kind of ideology or religious view. So the Ayatollah who just got killed, apparently his son believes that this is a part of end times too. So they're already basically going along with the same narrative that it's end times and that we've got a role to play in bringing about end times. But one other thing that we should comment on too is what else happened in the 1970s. It was the petrodollar that was created by Kissinger and the House of Saud. And they made the deal with the House of Saud, who were a little bit kind of antagonistic to Iran. And the Shah of Iran, well, basically, if you'd have tried to involve the Shah of Iran in the petrodollar, he'd have said no. And you couldn't have Iran, and remember, Iran's oil reserves are huge. You couldn't have them having independence, so you had to take out Iran to get the petrodollar. And so I think now the petrodollar is dying, they're bringing back online all of that oil that was in Iran. So they've kind of kept it there as a reserve. So that's another part of it, is the financial reset. Obviously, Iran and Venezuela were both nations that could have upended the petrodollar. And now that the petrodollar's gone, they're both coming back online, which is interesting. And America wants to make sure it comes back online in their hands. So I think we've got multiple narratives happening here. We've got the psychotic end time stuff. We've got the US empire and this bifurcation. So you're going to have the split between East and West and two sides of a supposed war, but it's a Hegelian dialectic. And then you've got the technocracy. And so, yeah, all three, I think they're all happening simultaneously. And the financial reset, of course. I think the financial crisis is actually happening behind the scenes. And this war narrative is just convenient because it allows them to hide a lot of this bad news that's coming out related to private credit, the AI bubble, which nobody believes that narrative anymore. It's like everybody's just waiting for it to crash now.
So do we think that Iran is playing knowing or not knowing? Because there seems to be fighting back. And I don't buy the stuff like, oh, we had no idea. They're, we're running out of the missiles. Like, we spend trillions of dollars a year for decades, and we just bought all the wrong stuff, or we don't have enough stuff. Like, I just don't believe that. But Iran is definitely fighting. I mean, do you guys both agree or disagree that, I mean, it seems to me they're fighting in good faith, which is what would be wanted if really destruction and a reset is on the table. You want the guys to be fighting in good faith and really to the death to get rid of all of their stuff. Don't bomb their weapons, let them blow them off. And you don't care where they go, let them blow up those other countries. That's what we want anyway. So is Iran knowingly playing the role, or they're just doing what is the right thing for them to do at the time, which plays into the hands?
I don't think it works like that. I don't think everybody knows what's going on. I think some do at the top level. But then there's these mystery drones that are appearing and hitting certain places. And Iran's like, yeah, that's not us. Like, we're going to give you a list of everything that we've done. And then all of a sudden, these other drones and missiles are falling in places like Dubai or Cyprus, British military bases. So clearly there's somebody there behind the scenes trying to amplify this and fan the flames of it. And I think there's others that, maybe because we don't actually know truly how the diplomacy works. It's a game of deals, I guess. Lots of different deals that are constantly being made. And behind the scenes, maybe they're a little bit more pally than they actually appear. But ultimately, I think, there's a core group that does know what's going on. And then there's lots of people who are somewhat co-opted or hijacked. Some people have, I think the real radicals get taken out, like the Iranian general, Soleimani, who they got rid of the other year. Like, he was probably like, he believed the narrative that Iran was against the West. And it was like, we need to get rid of that guy.
That's what the Russians, that's what the Russians have been doing in Russia. right? So all the Russian patriots are being jailed. Okay,
just like in the Soviet era, just like what
Putin.
Stalin did.
Yeah, and then I mean, just to add to that, we can touch on this later. But a former podcast guest shared with me this story, and it's a clip. It's in Russian, but it says for Putin's former advisor on the internet. Let me just share this clip real quick because it goes to exactly what we're speaking. So Putin's advisor on the internet, former German Klimenko, stated that the internet in Russia will cease to be anonymous by 2028, and that Roskomnadzor, the Russian, overseer of the, I guess, internet there, is fighting VPNs so that Russians have no access to alternative sources of information, and by 2028, the internet will become fully transparent. It's like rah rah. Putin, and like that's happening everywhere. It's happening in Iran. It's happening in U.S. It's happening in EU, China, Mexico. Here, the craziest news this week was they've introduced bills now in New York, Colorado, California, Brazil, that all operating systems, Windows, Mac, all flavors of Linux, Android, so laptops, desktops, and smartphones will have to have identity verification. So when you log on to your computer or your smartphone, they want built-in identity verification. This is global. So I think effectively that answers your question, Monica. That
social media ban that's happening. This under 16 social media ban is happening in Britain. It's happening in Indonesia. It's happening in India. It's happening in Poland. It's happening now across they all just come up with this idea independently that we're going to ban young people from the internet. And of course, this is all about digital ID. It's all about online verification. It's about taking back control of our digital world so that everybody has to be identified. And I just think when you throw in the financial crisis and then they're going to say, okay, whatever it was that caused this, we need to have verification. Maybe it's a cyber attack. So they say we need to go to digital currencies. I think we're really close now. All of the pieces emerging to create one coherent narrative. So yeah, I think that ultimately, whatever the driving power is behind this, and I think it's something demonic, that it will end up with this one world system within the next, I'd say, 5 years. And this war, and I'd love to get your take on this, guys. I feel like it's not short. I think it's going to go on and on and on. They'll keep dragging people a little bit, say, oh, just another week, another 2 weeks. But I could quite easily see that in 3 years, we're still talking about not the Iran war, but the thing that spawned out of the Iran war. It's just going to be way bigger. And I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see this being short. So I'd love to get your take on it.
I can see Chekhov's gun. I can see some type of nuke going off, whether it's as a result of the Ukrainian war theater or this Middle Eastern war theater, because the elites in their own papers say this is the only thing that matters. They want world federation, world government. For me, that confirms the Bible is true. It's predicted that Revelation, was it 13? It's all over, all rich and poor, right, on the planet. It's implicit that there's going to be a world state. And you've got the Anglo-American establishment I got some idiot moron. I'm not even going to answer you on my Telegram channel saying, oh, Hrvoje promotes this NWO theory. I'm like, well, dude, what planet are you on? It's literally for a century. They're saying it to your face. We're going to establish world state. So these guys must be subversive agitators. At this point, I don't know what to tell you, but I'm going on a crazy rant here, but where were we?
Well, you were saying
I just wanted to mention,
long is it going to go?
I got somebody from the Lucis Trust sign up to my Substack because of my article on Alice Bailey and she signed up to my Substack just to leave me a 2-page article about my recent article on the externalization of the hierarchy, which Alice Bailey prophesied would take place in 2025, that suddenly there'll be all these reveals, and then eventually we'd find out that there's these other worldly entities. And what are we seeing? UFO disclosures of these, lots of talk about archons. And I think these are demons. That's my take, is that, these are demonic entities. And yet we are learning about the elites, and this Satanism is actually out in the open now. So yeah, anyways, I wrote an article about that and about how many of the things prophesied by Bailey are happening, including this New Age religion. And like I said, somebody signed up and left me this really long ranty message saying I was lying, I was wrong, that Alice Bailey was spreading light and truth. And
That's what they say. They say that God is bad because he gives us drives and then tells us not to use them. And the Gnosticism is emerging like in the alt media world too, where that diminishes the dominance of God. But they don't think that it's bad. They think it's light and good.
So I'm just going to add.
Or that's what they argue.
But I don't think they've read these books. I don't think they know about Bailey. If they did, they'd say, oh, wow, this is exactly what we're following.
Well, I think that person was there to put the facade over it. I don't think that person was.
No, I'm talking about the alt media, though. Like if the alt media
right.
investigated this and that there is actually discussions on this going back 100 years, then maybe they would think twice about the whole new age stuff.
I think a swath of alt media is our initiates of the Theosophic occult. And I was just going to bring up, and when I look at Jeff Berwick now,
yes,
I've hung out with Max Egan, but it's like you have this group of people. Like it cannot be denied now that Berwick is a fraud. Like Etienne de la Boissière Squared, who I've had on, he's been now writing articles calling out Anarchapulco.
And James Guzman was pretty early.
Right. And then he says that he just posted recently, he just got a flood of DMs and comments from people who have been through and through scammed by Jeff Berwick out of tens of thousands of dollars. The guy doesn't stop. So first of all, for that reason, I don't want to associate with him or in Acapulco. But somehow he's getting money and being prominent and pushing hardcore. I pointed this out in my Mexico solo cast. He was all but quoting Lucis Trust and Alice Bailey. He's got some mystic called like Christ Melchizedek. Like it's insane. It's like in your face. The alt media is saying Lucis Trust Theosophy. But I have to bring up Catherine Austin Fitts, even though I'm going to be on a panel with her next week, Independent Media Alliance, but on Iran. But I mentioned in the weekly analysis that I did. So she was on Tucker the other day. The second time in 10 months, okay? And she's super smart, smarter than me, right? And everything she said about the control grid, all that was great, amazing. But she did what she did in the first interview. At the end, the home run, the takeaway, she sells us this guy called Robert Temple, A New Science of Heaven. It's like, look, I don't need a new science of heaven. And she says she's Christian. This is what gets me. But if you look at this Robert Temple, and what she's promoting, it's the complete 180 of Bible and Christianity. And I'm sorry, but what she's promoting is New Age. And I did a research. This guy's saying everything is plasma. So it's like, this is oneism. It's anti-biblical. Dr. Peter Jones of Truth Exchange has talked about this. Because if everything is plasma, we're all one. It's oneism. There's no differentiation between the creator and creation. So she's promoting the same thing that David Icke is promoting, that Berwick is promoting. And when I researched, I found an interview where the author gave to the Theosophical Society, and he's talking like Blavatsky, and then other book reviews and another interview he gave, he's talking about Gnosticism. And then other people who've reviewed his book, what they're taking away, they're talking about post-Christianity, Gnosticism. And I'm like, well, how can you say you're Christian and now you're promoting universal consciousness, oneism, everything, we're all one? And I'm like, this is like this is the second or third tier. For those of us who can see through Alex Jones' bunk, the second or third deeper layer, the second front that is more difficult to be discerning and get through is the David Icke, onist.
Yeah, here's the thing with that stuff, and it's why there's always that little bomb, that little tell, that little thread to pull on. You find somebody who, and I think this is true for David Icke, you'll read his book, and I remember doing this, like absorbing all of the content that he had out there. Maybe I paid for a seminar just to see what it was all about after I was already kind of awake to this stuff. And through it all, there was absolutely, it's kind of like the Edward Snowden reveals, there was absolutely nothing in there that I hadn't already found. And I'm not like a super deep journalist. Like I don't find, when people come out finding stuff that I never found, I'm like, how did you do that? And so this was all stuff that I had already accessed. And then the punchline was something weird, lizards or whatever. And you get that with like flat earth or icy demons or whatever it is. There's that punchline. And that's what it's all about. So you look at Tucker Carlson, but he says all this great things. Like, of course he does. That stuff's out there. They'd be stupid not to use it to give credibility to their guys so that when it's time for the zinger, they've got a huge, massive following. And I have something to say about the duration of the war. But we can finish.
But this is the thing for people that don't know. The whole point of all of that is that a fake Christ returns, and it's the Antichrist, and they put him in the rebuilt temple. So if you want to cycle it back round to everything that's happening in the world right now, that's the punchline: is that you end up worshiping the Antichrist and get put into a financial digital control grid. Although the Bible doesn't say digital, but it says it can control who buys or sells. And this is what I was writing in my article. They literally announced this. So whilst people will say, no, it's not Lucifer that we worship, they literally in their own text say, oh yeah, it really is Lucifer. And Helena Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine, she said, Lucifer is divine and terrestrial light, the Holy Ghost and Satan at one and the same time. And now it stands proven that Satan, the red fiery dragon, the Lord of phosphorus, and Lucifer, or light bearer, is in us. It is our mind, our tempter and redeemer, our intelligent liberator and savior from pure animalism. And that is why in the book of Revelation, it is also said the dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. It is Satan, the old serpent, who is the real father of the chosen people.
Dude, I have
so that's Helena Blavatsky.
A visceral reaction just hearing you read that. Like, that's just really makes me nauseated. But
this woman, Monica, came onto my
I saw it. No, I saw it, and I think we should have
You're lying.
Mike, you didn't. You haven't understood. You haven't understood, Mike. You just don't understand. Lucifer is the good guy.
Stop!
You haven't achieved gnosis. You haven't achieved the gnosis.
The Christos,
Mike.
And, yeah.
That's the thing. You have to have that kind of inversion to say with a straight face that Jesus wants us to drop bombs on innocent civilians, that Jesus wants us to invade nations that have not aggressed towards us. Like, the idea that murder is a way, is a bridge to Christ is insane.
Well, yeah, but that's that one-two punch. What I said earlier. So this fake Christianity with that's bombs and bullets, right? Again, the biblical message, it's social gospel. There's no politics here. Christ said, "Preach the gospel, repent. My kingdom is not of this world; it's spiritual. It's here now. It's coming. I'm going to come back one day and establish it. But until then, your goal is just to preach hell, fire, and sin and repentance. That's it, right? This is why it's not to be involved in this Israel building project and Temple Mount and all that stuff. And then the second part is, once we discredit Christianity with this Zionist, what do you call it, Schofield type thing, Darby, then comes in this fake Christ, right? The theosophic Christ, who will be
yeah. You have to remember, though, that the way that you can recognize it is to know, like, by their deeds. Like, what's right and wrong, and don't let false flags or propaganda distort your touchstone of morality and even legitimacy, like foundational law. So that was the only piece of content I put out since last time solo stuff, since the Iran thing started, was just, is this what is a just war? How is this justified? What is constitutional? All that. So just, you have to keep your feet on the ground when it comes to the principles, so that you can't be swayed when they do a false flag attack or a major assassination or something, because they obviously they do that.
But Monica, don't you care about the Iranian women?
Yes.
Don't you want them to have free access to OnlyFans so they can...
and abortion and stuff? Yeah. No, I want. I respect their sovereignty. I don't know anything about it. I don't. Our Constitution, we and for the people. We cannot. Somebody wrote a tweet like, you yo-yos who think you know what's going on, you have no idea what Trump knows and why he did this. I'm like, yes, that's why there has to be an act of Congress in order to declare war, which, by the way, would be completely meaningless now because a declaration of war recognizes that a state of war exists, and now a state of war exists. That's why you have to get the permission ahead of time. But I wanted to say about the duration and about what Hrvoje was saying about a nuclear war is that nuclear weapons being used is that Trump came out overnight, I guess, and said his terms now are unconditional surrender. And two things came to mind about that. One is if you're saying unconditional surrender, you're opening this up for a forever war. Because there's always a condition that's basically unmeetable. I mean, we learned that in actually Austria said, okay, sure, I'll meet your conditions. And they did World War I anyway. But but it reminds me of the Japanese situation where they said, we want unconditional surrender. And they said, well, we're not going to give you our emperor. He's divine. And this is also if people have a religious feeling there, and that unconditional surrender means, okay, we're employing the Shah. You have to get rid of all the morality in your law. You have to legalize abortion and all this kind of stuff. Those are conditions that may not be met. So you get a complete forever war out of that. And also you may get an excuse to drop a nuke based on the same thing they said during World War II, which is if we have to invade Japan, we will lose 1 million Americans. Wouldn't you rather lose 200,000 Japanese? They could use the same thing. So I found it was very significant that Trump said unconditional surrender overnight for a variety of reasons.
That basically is saying that there is zero room for, nobody would accept unconditional surrender unless you was already a vanquished nation. That have to destroy you first, because when you accept unconditional surrender, you basically give 100% complete power to somebody else, like a total complete power. They can occupy you. They can have military bases all across your country.
Yeah, they would install the Shah, son of the
They
Shah.
could change the state religion. They could do what they want. So nobody's going to accept that. But I think you're 100% right. The fact that he said that was actually invasion, because it's an announcement that we're going to wipe you out and that you have to go full-blown war. Because if you ask for that, you're essentially telling them that,
And Assad, you just see, because of what happened to Gaddafi, Assad could not surrender. He could not, so there would be no point in him surrendering because Gaddafi cooperated the whole time. He completely capitulated in all the demands. And actually, Iran was going to do that too. The concessions that they had put on the table for conventional weapons, nuclear energy, getting rid of their enriched uranium, it absolutely paled, or Obama's nuclear deal paled in comparison to the absolute total victory that was on the table for Trump if he had accepted the negotiations that Iran brought to the table. And it just shows how bad faith that was, and turned around and bombed them. And again, that there's an end game here, and it's not pretty, and I'm not sure it's going to be quick.
And
just before I pass it to you, Hrvoje, but we've seen this multiple times with the U.S. negotiations. It's we're negotiating and then they whack someone behind the scenes whilst the negotiations are happening, or blow something up. So they're not negotiations; they're theatre. And whether everyone's in on it or not, I don't know. But it is. There's definitely a lot of this that's it really, what they're trying to do is win the minds of American people to propagandize them into supporting this, and potentially having US troops sent out there. I mean, why would they be telling them it's a holy war if they're not planning to send them out there? But anyways, I'll hand it to you, because you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, just the story I was sharing at the screen from JFeed, which is, and I'm not a fan of, I listen to Tucker, he does say some good things, but Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens,
limited hangouts have value because they hang it out. You gotta discern.
He's one of the better limited hangouts, but Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, I don't listen to them.
You want better limited hangouts.
Yeah, JFeed comes out and February 28th says we need to put these people in World War II style internment camps. So we have now Jews, American Israelis, American Jews, calling to put Americans into detention camps like the Japanese were during World War II, which I think you guys just brought it up. I think this is all those FEMA camps, the ICE, DHS warehouses. I think if they go further with Iran, it's going to be World War III like World War II. Dissenters will be placed in the ICE, DHS camps. I mean, it's just wild. I made a tweet the other day. There was a story from Biometric Update talking about the Palestinians and how they're being put basically into a digital ghetto. And I'm quoting my Jewish American historian guest, Edwin Black, from 6 years ago, who he's Jewish. Is he a self-hating Jew? No, he's very Zionist. He said they're building a global algorithm ghetto where that term he created from physical ghettos Jews were put into, right? So what the physical ghettos that Jews were put into, they're now creating digital ghettos, which are the same thing. And Palestinians now are being put into ghettos by Jews. The irony, and then this is going to happen worldwide. And so I don't know if you guys want to, just to close out the American Union stuff, there's a lot going on there. Any other thoughts on Iran or anything else before moving on to the Americas?
The only other thing I'd say is in the past 2 weeks, we saw Blackstone and BlackRock halt redemptions of their private credit funds. And Blackstone, it was wild because what they actually did was they had a limit of 5% redemptions. It blew past that because everyone's panicking about private credit. So it hit something like 8 or 9%. So rather than show that they had a liquidity issue, because what it is with private credit, you're basically lending money to businesses that would be otherwise unable to get traditional loans from banks. So the valuations of these companies are made up. The collateral they're putting up is, we're finding out it's non-existent. Or in the case of First Brands, it was warehouses full of windscreen wipers. This was the high level collateral they was putting up. So, anyways, both BlackRock and Blackstone have halted redemptions of the funds. But what Blackstone did was they asked their employees, forced their employees to put some of their capital into this $400 million worth of redemptions. So I think behind the scenes, we do have a financial crisis brewing. It looks a lot like 2008 or the build up to 2008. We've already had a lot of the bank stocks selling off. We've had repeated instances now where private credit has been exposed as having lots of skeletons in the closet. And so I think this is another part of it. And the US economy is ailing. The jobs numbers are being revised down 1 million last year. And the recent jobs numbers from January were way under what they expected. So lots of people being laid off. And just anecdotally, I'm hearing a lot of really bad news from people saying, they're laying off people at my place, worried about inflation. So I think whilst all that's happening and it's right for us to focus on Iran, we also have to just factor in the probably distracting us from the financial element, which is probably coming in the next few months. And so I'm a little bit, I know we mentioned it briefly, but I think it's just important to keep updating listeners as to what's happening in that space because it's getting pretty nasty out there. And finally, 3 days this week, everything sold off. So even gold was selling off this week alongside Bitcoin and the NASDAQ. And the last time we really saw that was in the 2020 COVID crash and in the 2008 GFC, where everything just sells off together. And that's because there's liquidity stress. So they're trying to raise liquidity ahead of a crisis. So I'm just wondering too, do they know behind the scenes how bad this private credit space truly is and what's coming? Because if it does transpire that it's as bad as people are considering it is, then the commercial banks are going to be on the hook for a lot of that too. Because whilst they haven't made loans to these private credit companies, what they are doing is lending money to the people lending money to private businesses. So I think, we're going to find out there's a lot of mess behind the scenes soon. So that's what I'm looking at in my work at the minute.
All right. And I just have to share the America stuff. And it's like, I can't catch a break. Late last night, someone shares this on X. And today, like a meeting happened that no one's ever heard of. And it's like effectively Iran is the next COVID. They're building out the Middle Eastern Union simultaneously as they are the American Union. And here it is. By the way, someone just told me I got mentioned again on Corbett Report. How cool. James listened to my solo cast on Mexico and told people to check that out. And you guys mind if I toot my own horn here? I pulled up this clip. So this is from October on the VIP panel. Was not public. You had to buy the membership on Latin America. So here's 1 minute of me in October saying, first comes Venezuela, then Cuba, and Mexico. And I'm quote tweeting this because Jim Rickards just came out with Daniela Cambone saying Cuba's next. I'm like even the non-Jim Rickards people like me, saw further ahead than Rickards.
Well, I think there's questions over Jim. He
that?
seems to always repeat. I think Jim always repeats the kind of official alternative narrative. But whilst we're tooting our own horn, I was mentioned twice in a Daniela Camboni interview recently, so that was pretty cool.
Who was the guest? I'm curious.
It was my friend David Rogers-Webb. I was actually supposed to do that interview, but I turned it down, believe it or not. So,
why?
Yeah, I wasn't on. I was exhausted. It was going into Christmas. We had a newborn, and I was asked to do it kind of going into the last week of Christmas. So I said, no. So anyway, David did it, but he mentioned me twice. So that was awesome.
Come on, Mike. I want to see you on ITM trading. But
I don't. I think if they invited me on after hearing my take, it would be the last time.
Hey,
me on.
Once is enough. But anyway, here's just me in October saying Venezuela and then Cuba. I add when it comes to because you were talking about military, the question of military intervention in Panama or elsewhere. I'm pretty convinced up until now that if we are to see any sort of real, hard military intervention, it'll first occur with Venezuela or Mexico, possibly Cuba. The church that I attend here in Mexico, we have a connection to a church in Cuba, and some of the members of our church go there on humanitarian aid missions, and it's just insane the stuff that I'm hearing of no electricity, no water, no telecoms. I mean, it's a horrid situation. I'm thinking Cuba might collapse, which could then lead to U.S., seeing that week and then going in the offing. So that sort of triangle of Mexico, Cuba, and Venezuela, I see would be the first for military intervention. Yeah, and we have Trump just this week saying Cuba's going to collapse, just like I said, and then we're going to pounce and take it. They just sent a boatload of Cuban nationals from Florida to try a Bay of Pigs 2.0. And I think Trump yesterday said he's going to basically install Marco Rubio as king of Cuba. And I think what we saw in Mexico, what I saw here 2 weeks ago, could have had connections to U.S. deep state operations, which brings us to this clip, which was wild over the weekend. Phil 2284 on X, he tagged me, and I couldn't believe it. We're gonna play this clip. I cannot believe it. Hegseth, they're announcing it. This is all coming in so fast. I'm shocked.
That is why President Trump has drawn a new strategic map from Greenland to the Gulf of America to the Panama Canal and its surrounding countries. At the Department of War, we call this strategic map the Greater North America. Why? Because every sovereign nation and territory north of the equator, from Greenland to Ecuador and from Alaska to Guyana, is not part of the global South. It's a security perimeter in this great neighborhood that we all live in. Each one of these countries border either the North Atlantic or the North Pacific. Each one of these countries sits north of the two basic geographic barriers that exist in this region, the Amazon and Andes Mountains. This is basic geography that we don't do much we should. And it restores our north-south relations, and we must get it right. In the north, the United States must enhance posture and presence in cooperation with you and our sovereign partners to defend our shared immediate security perimeter. In the south, meaning south of the equator, the other side of this great neighborhood, we will strengthen partnerships through increased burden sharing. This will enable you to take a greater role to defend the South Atlantic and the South Pacific, and to secure critical infrastructure and resources in partnership with us and other Western nations. This is what we did in World War II, just like we sunk ships with torpedoes in World War II. At the Department of War, we called it the quarter sphere defense. And we will do this again. If we're serious about
I think the original clip was poor. And just to add before my final example here, I found it long ago, but I can't find it anymore. Apparently, Thomas Jefferson had a letter that he wrote in the 1700s where he was talking about, again, this is why I'm saying America is not a Christian nation. It's an Masonic, satanic occult project. When you have all these Freemasons, and Thomas Jefferson talked about an empire of liberty. So back then they were talking about one world government modeled on the Democratic Republic. And he was talking about a United States of the Americas, Thomas Jefferson. So, the entire Western Hemisphere from Canada all the way down to South America being one unified United States of Americas, not America. And then you've got this just happened today. Like, what? I can't keep up with this stuff. Trump with leaders from across Latin America at the Shield of the Americas Summit. Milei, Bukele, and others. So you've got
Is that
Shield.
AI or is that real?
No, that's real. Shield of the Americas.
Oh, wow.
Feels like Marvel. I just quote tweeted
Looks ridiculous.
the TechNate map, and my
Didn't
comment.
they make Kristi Noem the head of that? They acted like they fired her, but I think they put her in charge of that.
Oh, I can't even keep up with this, Monica. And my comment is, just as free trade, quote, NAFTA was one pretext building block for the North American Union. Narcos, quote, Shield of the Americas is going to be another building block, because they're basically, here he gave a speech and he's saying, Shield of the Americas, we come together to announce a brand new military coalition to eradicate the criminal cartels plaguing our region. But effectively, again, that's just the pretext, right? The cartels to form this Shield of Americas to further regional integration. So
I was thunderstruck when I saw that they were doing all this stuff while I'm like, can't sleep at night because we started World War III, and they're turning their eyes to inward and southward, and in like parallel with that Shield of Americas thing, Hegseth signed a 17 country joint security document with, I guess, all those people in his quarter sphere or whatever he calls it. And, that's a kind of NATO thing, one for all and all for one. And I, of course, want no part of it. But if they consider the narco, it's just like the so-called Islamic terrorists in the Middle East. They're being accused. The idea is that they're pirates. So they are not state actors, and that actually requires certain constitutional things like letters of marque and reprisal and stuff. But we use it for the basis of American exceptionalism, which is violate other people's sovereignty. You say, well, we're going into your country because you're not controlling the terrorists there, and you don't get sovereignty because you're not doing your part. And they're using the drug cartels for the exact same reason. And I do think it feels like a prelude to invasions.
And I want to add just a comment, because I was talking about some of this stuff in my weekly update.
But like the rule of law is gone. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
And COVID was the thing that proved it. That was their testing ground, in my opinion. They said we were going to violate every law of math, science, nationhood, morality, and let's see if anyone can do anything about it. And they could not.
And so someone from my paid subscribers comments on my weekly update, and they said, excellent overview. Thank you for having the courage and resilience to cover the truth and tell it like it is. No point sugarcoating at this point. I really appreciate this truthful overview of insane world, because I'm saying, like, we're screwed. The operating system, verification, they're just doing Middle Eastern TechNate, North American TechNate. I mean, some of the old media folks talk about like Mexico. Yeah, they just announced you got to register your phone and do the biometric corp. I'm like, they're not really going to do it. They are going to do it. They're doing it. They're going to do it. They've done it. Like what? No. It's like, I can't stand anymore this hopium, copium. You're so black pill. Like, they're literally destroying us. And it's almost like you guys are the actual psyops begging for these white pills and calling for black pill. Like, understand the reality of the situation. They were being overrun. This is cope at this point. I don't have, my solution is, Jesus is the parachute. I mean, what can I tell you? We're being overrun. It's not looking good.
Actually, The problem is that when you get into that state of thinking, well, that's black pilled or whatever, you're allowing them to convince you that a war of aggression is somehow acceptable to Christianity. That's the test. That's the opportunity. The opportunity is to hold firm in your morality. I mean, that's the thing. That is your test. That is what you can do.
That's your victory. Like, is the power to say no and to say, actually, I'm not like I feel like it's a great success for you as an individual. Anytime you don't fall for it, anytime you route out a lie and a deception and you say, no, I'm studying like when we started this show, it was because we all thought that we knew the truth on something and we was refusing to jump in with the hubris, the pride, all of the low-hanging fruit to make ourselves feel great. We're winners. Trump's going to save us. Oh, wow. What a great few years we're going to have. And now look where we are. It's World War III. But I guess for me as well, the black pill is actually when you stop caring. And you say, there's no point anyways. No, that's the black pill. Recognizing the problems isn't a black pill. Is saying, well, yeah, this is happening. It's reality. And, I think you should accept reality, but you should also say to yourself, well, what can I do within that? Like, what can I do to keep my dignity, to keep my freedoms, to keep my liberty? How can I maybe take back my independence from this system that really wants to just run roughshod over your ability to act freely? And so that's what I do. I just focus on that. And people will say, but what if? There's always those people out there, but they're useless. Those people, just ignore them. I think, there's a lot of victory to be had in just being honest with yourself and trying. And who knows, maybe everyone else gets thrown into that digital prison 20, 30 years before you, and you have a much better 20, 30 years of your life before it catches up with you. That's the way that I see it.
There's also a prison of, I believe that mental illness and drug addiction are one of the ways that people cope with the cognitive dissonance. And it really takes some strength of character and mental strength to see the truth for it, just for your own sanity. You cannot control it. That is also part of the truth. But asking someone to walk you down the garden path isn't going to work. And in the end, the truth will come out, and it's very hard to deal with when you've lived a life based on non-reality.
Well, it's comfortable for a lot of people right now to stay in that. I mean, I was speaking to someone today and they said, Mike, I cannot believe that many people I know are still following this MAGA narrative. And I said, well, it's more comfortable. It's more comfortable to believe that somebody's going to do all the work for you, that your life is that simple. You just sit back, kick your feet up and watch your Fox News or Tucker Carlson and it's all going to come good. Meanwhile, I don't see the trajectory going that way. So it's emergency evasive action for the individual.
I was just what came to mind for me was like, I derive comfort from understanding the true reality of how bad things are. For me, that's more comforting than deceiving myself that things are better than they actually are. Because once I understand how bad things are, then, as you said, Mike, I can make whatever preparations I can. And I was going to say, I think a lot of these parallel solutions are bandages. Like at this point, if they're going to try to bring in ID verification and, I've got a Graphene OS, and it's like, with all of those solutions, you're just going to barely be able to survive, which of course means definitely that's what by default we should be doing. By default, that's the least we can do. As you just said, Mike, to extend as much as the few centimeters that we can. And also, we don't know what spokes will be thrown in the wheel of the globalist technocrats.
Yeah, and Hrvoje, you've still got a choice of which frying pan you boil in. So you might not like the one you're in. Maybe there's a better one over there. Like, I didn't like the one in the UK, so I jumped out of that one.
The Mexican frying pan has a few more spices, so it's slightly tastier. Salsas.
The weather's better in your frying pan, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing. I mean, people in other parts of the world now, I don't have to deal with heating
oil
at all. So that's one less worry, when it comes to surviving.
Well, we're going down another topic there, but the grand solar minimum, which is a little bit esoteric for some people, but I used about 4 years worth of wood this year. It was that cold.
Yeah, well, as a wrap, Mike, could you say or both of you, what you might do right this minute the first thing I did when this all started is I filled up my tank of gas and I, just kind of went to Costco because who knows what's going to happen. Is there anything someone could do right now if you think we're poised for a cyber shutdown or whatever, like someone who doesn't already have a flock of chickens?
Yeah. So for me, the basics are who your counterpart is. So where are you exposed to counterparties in the financial system? Do you have bank accounts where you've left too much money? Do you not have anything that can act as a store of value outside of that? That's the first thing I'd do, just because I would be worried that something happens there with the financial system. And the second is just to make sensible decisions. So me and my wife, our car was breaking down. So we got a better car that was more efficient because we're worried about the fuel cost as well. Like you said, filling up the car with gas. But yeah, we got one that was a hybrid, so we can actually use the electricity engine for a bit. It's better. It's more efficient. Just simple stuff like what might you need if we have a global slowdown and a lot of the goods go offline like they did during COVID, but it goes on for longer. And if you haven't thought about precious metals already, think about it. you might want to think about it now before it gets too bad. But ultimately, a lot of it's common sense stuff. So I'm not going to go through, having a backup generator and food store. Like if you don't have a year's food store, one thing I always say is if you've got a retirement account of like whatever, $500,000 or $1 million and you don't have a food store, that's insane to me. That's insane because your ancestors would be rolling in their graves because when they was investing during like the Great Depression, it was investing, we're going to buy some more chickens. We're going to have another plot of woodland or another field. And we just keep putting our money back into this Ponzi scheme, hoping it's all going to come good. So yeah, those are my solutions that I'm doing right now. And just trying to make sure that there's nothing that's not covered. And then what will be, will be. I'll let it play out as it plays out.
Yeah, I'll just add, I just stock, as you said, it's all common sense. Stock up on as much as you can of non-perishables, whether it's things you need, the toilet papers, the whatever, soaps, as well as, food that has a longer shelf life. I'm not in the position. For me, it's spiritual ultimately, because there's going to be a whole swath of people. And I think it's always been like this. Not everyone can be on a rural farm. It's just a fact of life. Even many Christians who know what are coming, they're just not in a position to drop down money and leave the urban setting. And I think that's okay, because I think there's going to be Christians who, and this whole rapture thing, I'm so sick and tired of it. Like, it's such a fake American thing that's obsessed with comfort and not wanting to feel any discomfort, when Christianity is all about torture, martyrdom, and imprisonment and death. And it's like, there's going to be those of us who won't make it out physically alive, or will have a hard time in this reset, which is why the spiritual aspect is, I think, the most important. Having the community, leaning on each other, but also having the mental resilience to power through these tough times. And if you don't make it through the other side, you don't make it. That's it. But if you do, you can start, rebuilding brick by brick, like that Rudyard Kipling poem, If, I have here in front of me. Losing everything in one, what is it? A game of,
Bitcoin?
Pitch and toss. Losing everything on one turn of pitch and toss, and starting all over again without muttering. So basically, that's all I got for it.
He totally was talking about crypto then. So I think that's a good place to end this one. We covered a lot: World War III, end times, Armageddon, food shortages. Not the cheeriest of stuff, but listen, that's where we are, people. That's where we are. And we should all actually be patting ourselves on the back, because we did foresee this. We predicted this back when Trump first got in office. I think that was the first time we all mentioned that Iran was on the list. Now, I know it's not exactly rocket science, but I think we've got a pretty good batting average now. So, yeah, maybe we'll discuss next time what we think comes next and see if we can increase it. In fact, why are we not betting on Polymarket? That's what we should be doing.
I've actually been thinking about that. Seriously.
We totally should. We should all pull our money and bet on Polymarket and see if we can. Maybe we'll be billionaires by the end of this end times crisis. Okay, my friends.
Although for Polymarket though, is it like Americans aren't allowed to do it that live in the U.S.? Is that right? From what I understand.
Oh, is that right? No.
Yeah, like
they're pushing it. Like our little talking heads are coming out.
Last I checked, that if you're a U.S. citizen in U.S., you're not allowed to do it unless they've changed that as of
Polymarket.
Yeah. So.
Will the Iranian regime fall by June 30th? There's a 30% chance. I'm going to say no and see if it lets me place a bet. I mean, it looks like
didn't Aaron Trump place a $30 million bet on oil just before 2 days before the Iranian war was announced?
Yeah, I've got no idea.
I wouldn't be surprised.
The grift is going right. Okay, that's a great place to leave it. I am Parallel Mike. You can find me over on Substack at Parallel Systems or parallelmike.com.
I'm Monica Perez. You can find The Monica Perez Show on your favorite podcasting platform. I'm also on Twitter at Monica Perez Show, and of course, also on Substack.
And Hrvoje from geopoliticsandempire.com.